Hello Anatomy, this is going to be our video lesson on the anatomy of the heart. For this video, we're going to spend most of the time actually doing some schematics. So I'm going to switch here to my document camera. For this video, I want you to have a blank piece of white paper. I'm going to use 4 different pens or pencils. I'm going to use a black, a blue, a red, and a purple. You definitely need to have a blue and a red, and either a black pen or a normal pencil will work. You don't have to have a purple, but 4 different colors would be useful. And at the end of the video, we are going to label the parts that we diagrammed on the heart foldable, which I emailed to you. So you want to have this printed out and go ahead and have it cut and taped like that. Okay, so let's get started. What you're going to turn in is a picture of your heart diagram. So you need to basically draw exactly what I draw. So we're going to go through the heart's anatomy, and as we go through this, we're going to talk about what's actually happening. So the heart is a 4-chambered organ, and I want you to start by just drawing a very simplified heart diagram. It looks like this. I want you to draw 2 atria that look like that, and 2 ventricles that are bigger that look like that. Okay, I know this is very simplified, but trust me, this is going to work for us. All right, I want you to label this one the left atrium, label this one the left ventricle, label this one the right ventricle, label this one the right atrium. And obviously, at any point in this video, if you need to pause it to catch up, obviously that's totally fine. So the heart's a 4-chambered organ. Remember, left and right are switched on diagrams. If you put this diagram on yourself, the left would match up to your left and the right would match up to your right. Atria are receiving chambers. They receive blood from either the body or the lungs. And ventricles are pumping chambers. They either pump blood to your lungs or to your body. And we're going to begin, I'm going to get my blue pencil, and we're going to begin with blood that's gone throughout the entire body, and it's going to be entering the heart through or into the right atrium. So I'm going to use a blue pen. So blue represents deoxygenated blood. Remember, we've discussed this before. Blood is never, ever, ever blue in humans. It's just different shades of red or purple. But most textbooks use blue to represent blood that's lacking oxygen or deoxygenated blood. So we're going to do that too. So I have 2 vessels here entering the right atrium. This one we're going to label the superior vena cava, C-A-V-A, and this one we're going to label the inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava drains blood from your head and above your heart. The inferior vena cava is going to be bringing blood from your lower body, your extremities, into the right atrium. Okay, so blood enters the heart into the right atrium via the superior and inferior vena cavas. Then blood goes from the left atrium from the right atrium into the right ventricle. Okay, now at this point, the right ventricle is going to pump blood to the lungs. And I'm going to draw this as an arrow going upward. The lungs aren't actually above the heart, the lungs surround the heart, but in our sort of simplified diagram, I want to draw it upward just so that it's clear. Again, this diagram is very simplified. Okay, so it goes up to the lungs, and I'm going to write the word lungs, L-U-N. Then I'm going to stop halfway through my N and write lungs like that. All right, and I'm going to put a box around this just because I feel like it. So when the blood's in the lungs, obviously it is being oxygenated. So I'm going to turn the blood from blue to red. Again, blood is never blue, but in our diagram, blue represents deox blood, red represents oxygenated blood. Okay, now at this point, the blood goes from the lungs back to the heart to the left atrium, and the blood goes into the left ventricle. All right, and then blood gets pumped throughout the body. I'm going to put the word body right there. Okay, now it's not to the right or to the left. Blood gets pumped to your head, to your arms, to your legs, to your abdomen. It gets pumped everywhere. Now, as the blood goes through your body, I'm going to draw an arrow like this. blood loses oxygen in your blood capillaries. So I'm going to write the word capillaries, C-A-P-I-L-L-A-R-I-E-S. I'm going to write it half in blue and half in red, because as the blood goes through your blood capillaries, it's losing oxygen to your tissues. Okay? Again, capillaries aren't beneath your heart. Capillaries are all over your body. I'm just drawing it beneath like this just for simplicity's sake. And then we're going to finish the circuit. The blood's going to go from the capillaries back to the heart. Veins will catch up to either the inferior or superior vena cava. Let me see if I can lift this up so you can see the whole thing, although we're not done with it yet. And that's one circuit. So one quick question. So how many times does the heart pump to do a complete circuit of this entire diagram? It pumps twice. The right ventricle pumps it once to go to the lungs. The left ventricle pumps it once to go to the body. Which do you think is stronger, the right or the left ventricle? The left one is stronger because it has to pump blood throughout the entire body, which is could be meters away from the heart. The right ventricle only has to pump blood to the lungs, which is not a very far distance to go. Okay, now I want to label some vessels. Okay, so I'm going to label these in black. Okay, so we labeled the actually, you know what? I'm going to label these in different colors. Labeled the two vena cava in blue because they had deoxygenated blood. This vessel right here that goes from the right ventricle up to the lungs, this is called the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Okay, it's blue, or I've colored it blue because it has deoxygenated blood. Pulmonary refers to the lungs. Obviously, this vessel goes to the lungs. It's an artery because arteries always carry blood away from the heart. All right, this is the only artery actually that carries deox blood. Most arteries carry blood that has oxygen, but because it's carrying blood away from the heart, it's called an artery. All right, and our diagram's a little bit simplified. The pulmonary artery branches into left and right portions. This just shows that it's one. It's actually, it has branches. The diagram that we're going to do in a minute on the foldable shows the different branches. But for here, we're just going to show it as one artery. Okay. Now, this one here, I'm going to turn this so I can write on it. I'll put it back. This one, we're going to label in red. The pulmo, that's an O, is the pulmonary vein. All right. The pulmonary vein is red because it carries blood that has oxygen. This is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. Most veins carry deoxygenated blood, but the definition of a vein is that it carries blood towards the heart. So because this goes from the lungs toward the heart, we call it a vein. And again, there's more than one. We're just showing one for simplicity. Okay. Now, this vessel right here, I'm going to label aorta. The aorta is probably the thickest artery in your body. It's very thick. It has very high blood pressure. It's the main vessel that branches off the heart, branches off the left ventricle. The aorta also is going to split into different sections. Again, for simplicity, we're just going to label it once here. Okay? So in this diagram right now, we have the chambers and the main vessels coming into and coming off the heart. Now, the last thing I want to label, and I'm going to circle 4 spots on this diagram in purple. All right? Now, notice I don't have these circles touching, the chambers touching, and the heart, they actually do touch. I'm going to draw a circle right here in purple, and I'm going to label that with a 1. I'm going to draw a circle right here. I'm going to label that with a 2. I'm going to draw a circle right here, comparing or connecting the left atrium and the left ventricle. I'm going to label this one 3. And then I'm going to draw a circle right here where the left ventricle or the aorta leaves the left ventricle. I'm going to label that 4. Okay? And remember, in the real heart, the atria and the ventricle actually touch. Here I have them separated just for simplicity. Now, these are the 4 heart valves. All right? And the heart valves are things that I'm going to want you to know. So right here, let's write the valves up here at the top. All right. This first valve is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. This valve is called the tricuspid valve. All right. The tricuspid valve is a valve that prevents blood from going the wrong direction. Remember, blood should go from the right atrium to the right ventricle. The tricuspid valve prevents blood from going back from the right ventricle back into the right atrium. What valves do in general is they prevent blood from going back where it came from. The proper flow of blood would be coming in here, here, to the lungs, here, to the body. You don't want blood going backwards. For example, you wouldn't want blood that just came from the lungs, right? You want this blood to go here, not back into the right ventricle, where it would be pumped back to the lungs. All right, so valves prevent the backwards flow of blood. The valve that connects the right atrium to the right ventricle is called the tricuspid valve. Now, the second valve right here that I have labeled 2, this valve is called the pulmonary semilunar valve. Pulmonary semilunar valve. Looks kind of like a half moon in real life. Pulmonary, because it obviously goes to the lungs. Semilunar, because it looks like a little crescent moon. This valve prevents blood from coming from the lungs back to the right ventricle. You want blood going from the right ventricle up to the lungs. All right. The third valve that I have labeled here is between the left atrium and the left ventricle. This is called the bicuspid, or sometimes called the mitral valve. All right. Here, the proper flow would be from the left atrium to the left ventricle. We don't want blood going from the left ventricle back to the left atrium, so it prevents the backwards flow of blood there. And the fourth valve that I've labeled here is called the aortic, no surprise there, semilunar valve. The aortic semilunar valve. And it prevents blood from going from the aorta back into the left ventricle. Okay, so let's just look at what we've drawn before we do our master diagram. I'm going to pull this up a little so you can see it all. So here I have the 4 chambers of the heart. I have the proper flow of blood. If you had to list the chambers in order, blood goes from the superior vena cava, the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, through the pulmonary semilunar valve, the pulmonary artery to the lungs, all right, then to the pulmonary vein to the left atrium, through the bicuspid valve to the left ventricle, then through the aortic semilunar valve to the aorta to the body. Okay? So what you're going to turn in for this assignment is I want you to take a picture of your diagram, make sure that you have your name on it, and you're going to upload this to the assignment that I will put on Classroom. All right, now the last thing that I want to do is I want you to take your foldable, all right, and I want to go ahead and label together I can't get this all in one shot, so we'll have to move it. Go ahead and label the anatomy on the foldable. Okay. All right, so I'm going to obviously tell you the answers, but I want you to think to yourself what vessel or what chamber is being represented before I tell you. Okay. All right, so, and in class, we're going to go through what all of these things do. For this one, I just want you to label the parts. So 1, I need to turn this a little bit, is pointing to this. 1 is pointing to the, you know what, I'm going to write this big. I want you to just write it in the slot here, because underneath we're going to write what it does. I'm going to write it big just so that you can see it on the video, but you write it small on the line. So this is the superior vena cava. All right, let's go to 2. 2 is pointing down here. 2, no surprise, is the inferior vena cava. All right, 3 is pointing to this chamber. So 3 would be the right atrium. 4 here is pointing to this valve. Remember what the valve was called between the right atrium and the right ventricle? This was called the tricuspid, T-R-I-C-U-S-P-I-D, tricuspid valve. 5, we haven't discussed this. 5, these are called chordae tendineae, C-H-O-R-D-A-E. Tendineae is T-E-N-D-I-N-A-E. They're called the heartstrings. They help anchor the valve to the chambers. When we dissect the heart, you can feel these with your finger. All right. 6, where is 6? 6, we also didn't discuss this term. 6 is called the papillary muscle, P-A-P-I-L-L-A-R-Y-M-U-S-C-L-E. We'll discuss what the papillary muscle does more in class. 7 is pointing to this whole chamber, which is the right ventricle. All right. 8, see how this valve looks kind of like 2 little half moons, semilunar. This is the valve on the right-hand side of the heart between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. This would be the pulmonary semilunar valve. All right. Okay, 9. Where's 9 on the diagram? 9 is right here, so we have to go to this side. So this valve that branches off the right ventricle is the pulmonary artery, right? The part where it first branches off, the base of it, is called the pulmonary trunk. In the diagram that we drew, I mentioned how the pulmonary artery branches off. See the different branches? Before it branches off, you call that the pulmonary trunk. All right. So 10 on my diagram, 10 is here. So this is the pulmonary artery. The vessels go underneath one another. See how this one branches off here and then splits? All right. This would be the right-hand side of the heart. So this is the pulmonary artery, right? It branches off this way. So this is the right pulmonary arteries. On the diagram, we just labeled this the pulmonary artery, but again, it branches into the right-hand side and the left-hand side. So no surprise, number 11, right here, the view of the pulmonary artery branches to the left side of the body. So not shockingly, 11 you label as left pulmonary arteries. All right. Now 12, where's 12? Okay, so look again. Here's the pulmonary artery, branches to this side, branches to that side. So what's going on here? So where do these vessels go? These vessels here are going to go underneath these the chambers to go into the left atrium. So this is going to be pulmonary vein, right? This is the right-hand side of the heart. So these would be the right pulmonary veins. All right. 13 is over here. 13 is right here. This is coming from the lungs too. So this is also pulmonary veins. This would be on the left-hand side of the heart. So this is the left pulmonary veins, or they are the left pulmonary veins. 14 is pointing to this chamber, which is the left atrium. 15 is pointing to this valve, the valve between the left atrium and the left ventricle. This one has the one that had 2 different names. This one's the bicuspid, or sometimes called the mitral mitral valve. 16 is pointing to this chamber, which would be the left ventricle. "17 is pointing to this semilunar valve between the left ventricle and the aorta. So 17 is going to be the aortic semilunar valve. All right. That valve goes up into the aorta, which is here. So 18 is pointing to the aorta. All right, and you can see how the aorta branches off here. These three branches obviously are going to go, they're going to feed your head, your arms, your neck. So for 19, let's call this, let's just label this arteries of the head, neck, and arms. You can see how they're going to branch off to feed the top of your body. All right. 19, we just did 19. 20 is pointing to this. We got to go down. 20 is pointing to this right here. So here's the aorta, right? Picture it going underneath your heart or behind it. This is going to be what's called the descending aorta. descending. It, not surprisingly, is going to feed the bottom half of your body. And the last one to label, this division here, is called a septum. So you can't see me right that, can you? S-E-P-T-U-M. It's just the line that divides, or the barrier that divides the right ventricle from the left ventricle. That's called the septum. Okay, so let's just scroll out for a second. You should have all of the parts of the heart labeled. In class, we're going to go through and describe in more detail what each of these things do. Although in the video, we've pretty much already hit most of the highlights. Okay. Okay, so again, just to remind you, what I want you to turn in on Classroom is to take a picture of your, I just turned off the document camera. I want you to turn in a picture, we'll go back, of your hand-drawn diagram. We'll turn in this one, all right? The next thing that we'll do in class is to take this diagram and fill in the functions. Okay, so that was the anatomy of the heart. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.